to talk about an API in 10 minutes with LoopBack. I know that this is about donuts, but I want to talk about fruit. Specifically, I want to talk about those stickers on fruit and vegetables too. You've all seen these stickers, right? Okay, well, they are called PLU codes, PLU codes, or price lookup codes, and they're governed by the International Federation of Produce Standards, which is like a life goal. I'd like to be admitted to the International Federation of Produce Standards. And once I found out about these, I got a little bit obsessed. And they have a nice website. Well, they have a website. And you can look up. Anytime you're curious about what those codes mean, you can go to their website and look things up, except for this. So sometimes you can't go to their website and look things up, except for this. You can export all of the PLU code data. And thanks to some help from csvjson.com, you can turn it into something that looks like this. And then, with the help of LoopBack, you can get an API for this data really fast, in case you need to have access to the PLU code data at all times. Because, yeah, you should. So what's LoopBack? LoopBack is an open source JavaScript framework for rapidly generating Node.js REST APIs. It is open source. It's maintained by IBM. So IBM bought StrongLoop about a year and a half ago. It's based on Express, which IBM also maintains or supports right now. It's free to use. And any LoopBack app that you make, you can deploy anywhere that you can deploy a Node app. And I think that the #1 reason to use LoopBack is for speed of development, and I'm hoping to show that to you tonight. So to set up LoopBack, you should have the most recent version Node, although it works with 4 as well, and NPM. And then you install the open source command line tool. And I was going to be super fancy and set up a Docker container so that you could see me actually install it for reals, but we've all seen NPM installs for like a bazillion times, so just imagine that that happened. All right, so if you've got your data, nice JSON-y data, and you have, say, perhaps a local Mongo running, then you can make a API. And I think I need to get to another window, so let me mirror this. Come on, machine. Oh, here we go. So, LoopBack, you've installed the command line, and you might think, oh, I want to know. Can you guys see this? Is it big enough? Yeah. What commands can I run for LoopBack? There are lots of commands you can run with LoopBack, but the one we want to start with, because we want to make an app, is lbapp. And then you get this nice Yeoman generator. Yay! So let's call this PLU API, because we're inventive that way. And let's make the directory the same name. And LoopBack 3 is out. LoopBack 3 is awesome. But when I do software development, I like to follow the advice of Alexander Pope, who said, "Be not the first by whom the new is tried, nor yet the last to lay the old aside." So I'm sticking with 2 for a little while. So I'm just going to build an empty server, because I feel like I'm probably the only person with this PLU code obsession, so I'm not going to worry about auth for now, because nobody else is going to want access to this, let's be honest. So now it's going to do some NPM installing while it generates things. So far, all of that was less than a minute. NPM install is kind of the longest part of this process, as it is all the time. So now I'm going to change to PLU API. Oh, see, I've also got another version, just where I was testing it. And I've got the scaffolding in place. And now what I want to do is see what else I can do. And probably it's a good idea to connect to a database, because it's going to be an API. So I'm going to connect it to a database, and it's going to run me through another set of questions. I'm going to call it Mongo. There are a bunch of connectors. Basically, LoopBack is something you can point at a database, any database almost, and create a CRUD API. And the Mongo connector is one of the ones that's supported by StrongLoop. And I'm just going to run this locally for now. So I'm going to just put in a regular old connector, a string URL, and then I'm going to ignore all these other things, because it's just going to use that string. And I want to install the connector so LoopBack can actually get at Mongo. And then it's going to do some more installings. All right, so now I have a scaffold, and I have a database, and what I want next is a model. because LoopBack is all driven by models. And this is probably going to be the longest part because I'm going to enter all of these properties of that Plu code model. And I'm going to attach it to Mongo. It's going to be a persisted model, which means it can save things to this database. And of course, I want to expose it via REST API. That's the whole point. And I'm going to let LoopBack pick the plural. It's generally pretty good about plurals. If you had a mouse API, it will give you mice as the plural of mouse. But if you really care about what plural you're going to get, then you can specify it. And I'm going to use a common model, which means it would be available for both the back end and the front end if I ever bother to write any front ends for anything. And okay, so we've got a lot of properties. So I've got Plu, and it's a number. And I'm going to make this one required because that's the actual code, and the code is the whole point. And there's no default value for it. The next one is category. And it's a string. It's not required, no default value. There's a lot of like boring typing that's going to happen for a little while. Variety. Now, when I was first looking at this data, I was like, oh, which ones of these are required? And it turns out none of them, except for the actual number. Lots of these are blank all the way through, which is kind of sad because I would like to know some of the data for all these Plu codes. Also, this is my favorite one, NA size, because the rest of the world doesn't use the imperial measurement system. So lots of these Plu codes are measured in both metric and, pounds and ounces instead of grams. So all of these are strings so far. Row size, I have no idea what row size is, and it's not really inspectable from the actual data. Restrictions, I don't know what that is either. I'd like to know. Notes, that's pretty self-explanatory. AKA, lots of fruits and vegetables have different names so that they can be also known as for regional variants, which I thought was kind of cool. Some foods are trademark, like Honeycrisp apples. That's a trademark. You can't call your Honeycrisp apple a Honeycrisp unless it's actually a Honeycrisp. Botanical name is pretty cool. And here are the ones that are not strings. They're dates. It's not required. And date added. This is also another one that I was sure was going to be obligatory, and it is not. So some additions to the PLU codes are lost in the dim mist of time, and no one knows when they were added. GPC is, I think, some kind of gross product code, like general product code that's used in places that aren't grocery stores. And sometimes, if you don't know what an apple is, they will show you a picture. All right, so now when we're done with the properties, we're done. So that took 4 minutes to type in all those property names. Now we're actually ready to start the API, which is kind of crazy, right? So you can just do this. And there's an Explorer where you can go and check out your brand new API. So let's see if I can get, let me break this tab off. Whoops. Let's move it back over here. Now we have all of these endpoints that were automatically created. And we can add something right away. Let's add that Apple record. Do I have the right? Yep. So let's see if this works. And there it is. And now we can get it if we want. Now, there's one thing that you can't do from the interactive generator that is something that you want to do with Mongo. And that is IDs. So that needs a little bit of customization. So we said that we were going to have, is this too small to read? Let's see if I can make it a little bit bigger. not sure why it's not becoming bigger. There we go. So this JSON is what is created from all that back and forthing on the command line. And because we didn't set an ID, there was no question that said which of these properties should be the ID for these records. It just assumed that it was going to create an ID for every record that we want to insert with this, with ID injection equals true. But I really want the PLU code to be the ID because that's the unique one and that's what I want to look up. So what I'll do is just do this. So I'll say ID injection false, ID is true. And I'll save that, and I'll go back and restart. If this were real, I would obviously use no daemon, but this is just the simplest thing to do right now. Then I can redo this. And as you can see, if I add that same data in again, oh, there's an error. What did I do? Oh, duplicate key. Ha. I've got to delete it before I can add it again. So what I could do is completely disrupt the PLU code system. And now we've got another one. And that means that, sorry, don't want to give people motion sickness. When I want to get something with the ID of 3001, if I want to know, oh, what fruit or vegetable is PLU code 3001, there it is. So that was 8 minutes to an API. Pretty cool, right? So why would you do this? Like, why would you not carefully and lovingly, artisanally craft your own API, you know, the way that God intended? And I think that I love LoopBack because I care more. Oops, I love LoopBack because I care more about the data in most cases than I do about the code. And in most cases, I just want to have a quick and dirty API, or actually with LoopBack, a quick and clean API to get at the data that I love faster. I think of LoopBack as like cake mix for APIs. If you want cake and you want cake fast, you should use cake mix. If you love the process of making a cake, maybe cake mix isn't for you. But I think most people fall on the scale of I like cake more than I like baking. So, and I just wanted to say that this PLU code data comes from the amazing Data is Plural newsletter, the tiny letter that you can subscribe to. And every week, if you want to get notified about random free data sets that are out there for the APIing, you should totally subscribe. So now that you have this API, you can build a front end, which I'm not going to do. So if you want to know more about LoopBack, there's really good documentation at loopback.io. There's a LoopBack Google group, and there's obviously a Stack Overflow tag. If you have questions, I have a version of this up on GitHub at all caps, PLU API, because that's just how enthusiastic I felt about it at the time. Hit me up on Twitter if you have questions, and you can also obviously at the friendly folks at StrongLoop. So I hope that you're all excited about cake. So, but I know it's donuts. There's still more donuts. Thank you so much.